Welcome. Thank you for being with us here this morning, and welcome to this official side event of Climate Week NYC, Toward a Green and Just Recovery, what promises to be an inspiring hour showcasing how divesting from fossil fuels and investing in climate solutions will accelerate a green and just recovery. If you'd like to follow along on social media, please join the conversation using hashtags divestinvest, the future we want, and Climate Week NYC. My name is Dan Zarilli, the Chief Climate Policy Advisor in the New York City Mayor's Office, and it's an honor for me to welcome you to this event. I'll be your MC for the next hour as we demonstrate the collaboration that is necessary to solve our greatest challenges of climate and inequality. The global divestment movement has exploded over the last decade, recognizing that ending the age of fossil fuels will require massive shifts in capital away from dirty energy to a clean and green future that doesn't create carbon pollution. Instead, it creates jobs and rights the environmental injustices from our past. And we've seen that this is both the right thing to do to protect our planet and people and our investments, because the world recognizes that meeting the obligations of the Paris Agreement means we need to keep fossil fuels in the ground. They are rapidly becoming worthless. Here in New York City, divestment from fossil fuels and investment in climate solutions is at the heart of how we confront the climate crisis, create jobs in a decarbonized economy, and ensure environmental justice. And even now, during a global pandemic, we know that we cannot ignore the looming climate crisis and the threats to health and well-being that it will cause. In fact, the green recovery is the way to accelerate our economic recovery from COVID-19. Over the next hour, you'll hear from mayors and leaders from around the globe describing their efforts to create a livable future. We're happy to present this Climate Week NYC event in partnership with the Earth Institute of Columbia University and C40 Cities. And as an official side event of Climate Week NYC, the biggest climate summit taking place this year, it was also prepared with the support of the United Nations, as well as the Climate Group. Chief Executive Officer of the Climate Group, Helen Clarkson, made a point of welcoming our speakers and all of our attendees with this message. Please welcome Helen Clarkson.
Hi everyone, my name's Helen Clarkson and I'm the CEO of the Climate Group, and welcome to Climate Week NYC 2020. Now more than ever, we're grateful for your continued support. I want to thank the City of New York for being a gracious host and partner to us every year. And while we can't all be together this year in New York City, it's been amazing to see the global list of events that we've got. There's over 300 digital events that have come together from 20 different countries, really taking our message of for New York, for the world to a different level. We're in the middle of a global pandemic, but climate change won't wait. And we're seeing the evidence of it now, seeing the pictures coming out of California and Oregon, the high air pollution, the drastic weather patterns, and seeing how climate change really affects the most vulnerable communities around the world. And as we work to build a better future after COVID-19, we must work towards a green and just recovery. States, regions and subnational actors have a really important role to play, and they're crucial in setting the climate agenda and really accelerating climate action, often even more so than federal governments. Earlier this year, we celebrated the 5th anniversary for the Under 2 Coalition, for which the Climate Group is the Secretariat. We have more than 200 members around the world who are together form the world's largest state and regional climate coalition, who are really driving climate action. And that's why I'm hopeful that states, regions and other subnational actors can collectively deliver in this, the climate decade. And just last year, New York City committed to transition to an all-electric fleet. As one of the biggest cities in the world and member of the Under 2 Coalition, this is the sort of commitment that really showcases the leadership we need in the fight against climate change. So it's my great pleasure to introduce this event, Towards a Green and Just Recovery, which features a panel of climate leaders who are leading to divest from fossil fuel and invest in the future of our planet. Let's build a better future together.
Thank you, Helen, for that warm and welcoming message. Now I'd like to turn to Penny Abiwardena, my friend and New York City's Commissioner for International Affairs, who will be discussing how local action drives forward global agendas. She has the great pleasure of introducing a very special guest from the United Nations for his keynote remarks. Penny, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much for having us here today. And I'm so sad we're not together. But climate action is indeed more critical than ever. That is why New York City immediately committed to the Paris Climate Agreement after the US government signaled its intent to withdraw from the accords. And that is why New York City continues to push forward with all the crucial efforts that we will be discussing today. As the proud home of the United Nations headquarters, the first virtual UN General Assembly, and the largest diplomatic corps in the world, New York City has been working to connect our local initiatives to global efforts, really since 2014, 2015. At International Affairs, we mapped the Sustainable Development Goals to our One NYC development agenda and created local programming with the UN that highlighted the synergies between the global goals and our One NYC vision. We also created the voluntary local review so that as local governments, we could activate the work of the UN in our own communities, and most importantly, accelerate the impact of the SDGs in our communities, right? This is not a time just to talk about what's new, but we also want to be exchanging best practices, what we know is working, so that we can accelerate that impact in our community. And I'm proud to say that we have more than 200 local governments that are now part of this voluntary local review movement. And I have to say, we have seen an uptick in participation while we have been going through this COVID-19 pandemic. And so this opportunity, this coalition for movement building around cities has been really critical for us. But still, none of this is happening in silos, and we all need to work together to create a future that is sustainable for all. And so it is an honor for me to introduce our first keynote speaker, Mr. Elliot Harris, the Assistant Secretary General for Economic Development and the Chief Economist at the Department of Economic and Social Affairs at the United Nations. Since 2015, Assistant Secretary General Harris has also served as a head of the New York office of the United Nations Environment Program. Mr. Harris brings over 25 years of experience in the field of international economics and development policy analysis. He is an expert in the design of macroeconomic policies and its application as a central instrument for the reduction of poverty and for resilient and sustained economic development. We are so pleased that he's joining us this morning to share his expert vision on the transition towards green and just investments. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the Assistant Secretary General, Elliot Harris.
Thank you very much for those kind words of introduction, Penny. And it's a great pleasure and honor for me to be here with you today. It's no surprise when I say that COVID-19 has upset and disrupted everything. And consequently, it's seriously affecting our prospects for achieving the SDGs. But I have to say that we were off track with regard to the SDGs even before COVID broke out. And so consequently, if we are going to achieve a just and a green recovery, which is the topic of our discussion here today, we are going to have to solve 2 or 3 basic problems that were afflicting us even before COVID came along to complicate things. The first of these problems is that government policy really hasn't changed in a fundamental way in step with the commitments for sustainability. And the second problem is that we still haven't been able to mobilize enough financing for sustainability, especially for sustainable investments. Now, the question about government policy is best indicated by climate action. There are very few governments that have actually taken the policies that will be consistent with their commitments under the Paris Agreement. And that's where the link between these 2 problems come up, because in the question of mobilizing finance, it's not just about getting new money for sustainable activity, it's about shifting existing money away from unsustainable activities. And that, I think, is the big challenge. Because government policies haven't changed fundamentally, the incentives that they create are also roughly the same, which means that it is still possible to generate a very healthy profit doing unsustainable things. And for most people, unfortunately, that's enough reason to continue doing them. If governments, however, shift their policies in a reliable and predictable way to support the transition to the green economy, to low carbon structures, and to greater sustainability, then those incentives will change. And what is presently attractive, even if it's unsustainable, becomes a losing proposition. And the money that's going into those unsustainable activities will be looking for other employment. And I think that when we achieve that, we will start to turn the curve towards sustainability, and we will start to really finance effective climate action going forward. Governments can do an awful lot to support this transition to a just and a green recovery. They can make sure that their public procurement is sustainable. That creates markets for goods and services that are produced in sustainable ways. They can invest in sustainable infrastructure, the energy systems, the waste management facilities, the public transportation, efficient buildings, all of which precondition our shift towards a green and low carbon economy. Fiscal policies can withdraw support from the things that we know have no future, such as fossil fuels. We should not be subsidizing them. We can use fiscal policies to put a price on carbon and take away some of the artificial attractiveness of those kinds of investments. But above all, what we need to do in public policy is to stop supporting things that are fundamentally unsustainable. And that's where this initiative is so really groundbreaking, because it is public policy actually walking the talk. This initiative, the Divest, Invest initiative, recognizes that fossil fuels have no future. Investing in them means putting money into assets that will be stranded. If you carry that thought a little farther, it means that investing in fossil fuels is a dereliction of fiduciary duty. It's a waste of precious public and private resources, resources that could be better used elsewhere. The second thing is, this is the kind of clear policy change that has been missing thus far. It sets up a clearly predictable direction for policy, and that helps investors to recognize how best they can deal with the risk of investing in new and sustainable activities. And finally, I think it sends a signal. It sends a signal to the citizens of our cities that their concerns about their future have been heard, and that their cities are taking steps now to shape that future. Now, of course, one might say it's easier to do it at the city level, at the municipal level, and harder to do it at the national level, but this is the kind of initiative that should set an example for policymakers at every level of government and in every country in the world. I congratulate the mayors of New York and of London for taking the initiative and bringing together other mayors. I encourage every city to look very carefully at this initiative and to see that this is the way forward. This is the path that will lead us towards a just and green recovery that will give us effective climate action and give us the sustainable future that we all want. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Assistant Secretary General Elliot Harris, for this brilliant and hopeful message. Your leadership on climate finance is exactly what we need to hear in this moment, and we're thrilled that you could join us for this important discussion. So turning to our next speaker, we all know that cities are on the front lines of our climate crisis. Well, I'm excited to welcome the 109th mayor of the city of New York. He's served in this role since 2014 and has advanced New York City's climate leadership with investments in clean energy, resiliency, and world-leading building retrofit legislation. Last year, he announced New York City's own Green New Deal to confront our climate crisis, address health and wealth inequities, and to strengthen our democracy. And in January of this year, in his capacity as co-chair of the C40 Global Divest Invest initiative, he and Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, urged fellow mayors of the world's leading cities to join with us in divesting their city pension funds and other investments from fossil fuel assets and to shift into climate solutions to help us avert climate breakdown and in this current moment to accelerate our economic recovery from this pandemic. Without further ado, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio.
It's as simple as this. Divestment works. I'm Mayor Bill de Blasio, and here in New York City, we believe in the Green New Deal, we believe in divesting from fossil fuels, and we believe in investing in renewable energy. And we know it's the way forward. Fossil fuels, they're still a part of our lives, but they are a thing of the past. They are not taking us where we need to go. In fact, they're endangering the future of our children and grandchildren. So what can we do? What can every one of you do right now? Start the process of ending your investments in fossil fuels. We did it in New York City, and we found a world of positive opportunities in renewable energy, better options, more reliable options, safer, greener options. This is where we all need to go. And by our action, by our leadership, we will help the whole world move towards that greener future. So divestment works. It's time for you to join this movement and help this whole world move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor de Blasio, for that inspiring call to action. I'm now proud to announce that our partner for this event, C40 Cities, is today launching a groundbreaking declaration, a real increase in the ambition of cities working to confront our climate crisis and end the age of fossil fuels. This declaration brings together mayors of some of the most influential cities in the world who are joining the call to divest from fossil fuels and invest in a sustainable future. 12 global cities have already signed this declaration, including New York City and London, yes, Los Angeles, Berlin, Bristol, Cape Town, Durban, Milan, New Orleans, Oslo, Pittsburgh, and Vancouver. And we call on all cities to join us. Let me now invite you to watch this short video presenting the signing cities' voices.
A key part of stopping global warming is about finance, moving financial assets away from the causes of global warming while increasing investments in climate solutions. It's about putting your money where your mouth is.
And so this is something and really a call to action for all cities, because individually we're one, but we stand as one, really united. And I think that it's essential that we all join forces.
This is not just about the present, but thinking about the medium and long term and enacting things that we can do today, actions we can take now, plans we can commit to right away to be sure that there still is an earth left to inhabit for all of us with our lives intact.
The city of Cape Town aligned its city financial powers with its climate ambitions through the city's climate change policy, cash management and investment policy.
To really drive investment and markets in the right direction, we need as many as possible to throw their weight behind an investment strategy that really delivers on the climate targets.
And so we're all impacted by climate change and needing to do better.
There's never been a better time to take a moral stand for putting your money where your values are when it comes to fighting injustice and fighting climate change.
What an inspiring video. Congratulations to all the cities that have joined the call to divest from fossil fuels and invest in climate solutions, a group that continues to grow. New York City is thrilled to be a signatory of this powerful declaration. The full text of the declaration is accessible on the c40.org website. And please join the conversation on social media using the hashtags divestinvest, the future we want, and Climate Week NYC. Divesting from fossil fuels and investing in climate solutions covers many topics. We're now going to explore some of them on a deep dive session, which will be moderated by a strong advocate of this work, of climate action and of green investment, someone I'm proud to partner with on this work, Shirley Rodriguez. Not only does Shirley serve as the Deputy Mayor for Environment and Energy in London, the leading city along with New York City in this area, but she is also an active member of the Board of Directors at C40. In her position at City Hall in London, Shirley is in charge of delivering the mayor's plans for tackling air pollution across London, including the city's and the world's first ultra-low emission zone. She is leading on delivering the ambitious target of London to become a zero carbon city by 2030 and London's Green New Deal, which includes divesting from fossil fuels and investing in clean energy. Please join me in welcoming Shirley, who will introduce the remarkable panelists of this deep dive session.
Hi, Dan, and hello, everyone, and thank you very much for that lovely introduction. I'd really like to extend my thanks to you and Lolita Jackson, who's not able to join us, I think, today, but should be on the call, and the team in New York, and also the team in London, Jasmine Burgess, who's with me in the room, and of course the team at C40, for doing such a great job in working to put this event together, getting all those cities to join the declaration, for being brilliant partners to us in London as we've navigated the divestment landscape together. It's a real pleasure for me to be here to moderate this session. As you'll have heard, Divest, Invest has been something that we've been real passionate advocates here in London. And it's an issue that the Mayor Sadiq Khan has been championing in London as well as globally, together with Mayor de Blasio and the C40. We've been working with our pension fund, the London Pension Fund Authority, to divest from fossil fuels, and we're really proud to now only have 0.18% of our assets invested in extractive fossil fuels. This is a reduction of 80% since we started that journey over 4 years ago. We've been also working with our local authorities in London to call on them to take action, and also the wider investment community in London. So you'll hear from Sadiq shortly after the panel, so I won't say any more. But it's really clear that we can't do this alone. Collaboration is absolutely key. So that's why it's really great to be here, launching the declaration with so many cities, standing together to take action. And you'll have seen that if you've had a look at the press release, that together we total at least $295 billion in assets of the pension funds that we're committing to divest. That's a massive amount, more than the amount that was mentioned in supporting the sort of COVID fossil fuels. But as we've heard, this has been pressing anyway before the pandemic, but we know now that we really have to scale up our action. Fossil fuels are every day becoming more and more risky as investments, and we really have to be using our efforts and our investment to scale up green investments for our recovery from the pandemic, and one that tackles the climate emergency, but also tackles inequalities, which the pandemic has really highlighted across the world. So that's why this conversation today is so important. And I'm really pleased to be introducing a fantastic panel of mayors and other speakers to help us with that conversation. These are representatives from finance and the climate advocacy movement too. So today we have Mayor Latoya Cantrell, the Mayor of New Orleans. We have Mayor Bill Peduto, the Mayor of Pittsburgh. We have May Bouvi, the Executive Director of 350.org, and Bhaktima Chandani, the Director of Responsible Investing, Trinity Church, Wall Street. Unfortunately, the Mayor of Durban, Mayor Mkolisi Kawunda, and who's also a C40 Vice Chair, is not able to join us today. So we can't hear from him about the strong climate leadership he continues to show in Durban. Not only have they launched their climate action plan aligned with the goals of the Paris Agreement, but was the first African mayor to do so. So we're really delighted that he was one of the 12 mayors to endorse the Divest Invest Declaration today. And just a little bit about what they're doing. They've committed to work with their city pension funds to transform their investment strategies, to integrate climate risk assessment and focus on green and just economic growth. The city is also going to be encouraging other South African investors to prioritise fossil-free sustainable finance, promote urban low-carbon investment opportunities to spur private investment, as well as raising public awareness about the Divest Invest action. These actions are all really closely tied to their climate action plan, which has an ambitious energy policy, which is going to prioritise renewable energy sources of electricity, with a view to 70% of the city's electricity supply coming from self-generated renewable energy by 2050. So that's absolutely fantastic. And that just shows the level of ambition from all of our mayors here, and you'll hear much more from the two that we have now. So I'm going to turn over now some questions to our panelists, and I'm going to start with a question to Mayor Cantrell, the Mayor of New Orleans, who's also a member of the C40 Mayors COVID-19 Recovery Task Force, which recently released the Mayor's agenda on a green and just recovery, which included as one of its principles divestment and green investment. So, Mayor Contrail, you're one of the 10 mayors on this recovery task force, and you committed to take bold action on divestment and investment in climate solutions we need. So can you tell us a little bit about how will this step support New Orleans' green and just recovery?
Well, first of all, thank you for the question, and thank you, Shirley, for underscoring that it is very clear that we cannot do this alone. And clearly in the United States of America, it's our cities. Mayors are at the forefront. And I'm so glad to be on this call, even with Mayor Peduto, as we have to stand tall and also send that message globally that we get it. Although there may be some issues, on that federal level that we're having to deal with, we get it. And so I'm more than committed, like now more than ever, especially, as we see firsthand cities burning and even hurricanes in terms of they're coming stronger, they're coming faster. And even I had to deal with about 2 here recently to where when they came our way, we didn't have the hour 60. Should I needed to call an emergency evacuation. So the time is definitely now. And as the Assistant Secretary said, that we knew this pre-COVID, but we definitely have to double down now that we're moving through it. Divestment represents a diversification of our economy, particularly here in the city of New Orleans, where our leading industry has been hospitality and tourism. And so in a time when rethinking our old paradigms is the only way towards a real sustainable COVID recovery. So redirecting funds towards clean investments fosters green jobs and sustainable industries and pathways that we're looking toward in terms of clean energy careers and solar, green infrastructure, environmental education, of course, transportation, community gardens, energy management, green construction jobs, to make our city, of course, more resilient, but allow our people to pivot towards these careers that will be sustainable literally for generations. And even as I think about these pathways, since March of this year, the city of New Orleans has put out over $300 million on the street for green infrastructure improvements. And I look to do about 288 an additional million by November of this year. Time is definitely of the essence. The fastest growing jobs in the US right now, we know, are in solar and wind industries. We want to be a part of that. The number of jobs created per 1 million investment in energy efficiency is higher than investments in energy sectors, period. And then offshore wind investments, particularly in the Gulf of Mexico, and that's we're resting right there. They create about 5,000 jobs with nearly $500 million of economic impact. And I just have to throw in there, March of last year, 2019, I had to join about 9 other parish presidents. That's parish, it's Louisiana, but in the state of Louisiana, in terms of New Orleans, has filed lawsuit against oil and gas. We've had to do it. We've been damaged. But other benefits of a low carbon economy include cleaner air and, of course, improved quality of life for our people. And also working with our financial partners in regards to how
I think
energy, even as it relates to our commercial sector as well. So just being more intentional about where we place our money, how we diversify it in a way to meet people where they are. And so that they're, at the end of the day, that their quality of life is better. And so that we're here again for another 300 years. That's what our goal, our goals are. So we are aligned with many things that even New York has done in terms of fleet management. We recently did that with our Sewage and Water Board as well in terms of their fleet. 50% increase in miles per gallon, which is huge, and a 33% decrease in emissions. So we're on our way. We have a goal of reducing our carbon footprint by 50% by 2030. And it's like, wow, that's less than 10 years away. So we better to work. And I'm thankful to you all's leadership, because it just keeps the fire burning within me to stay committed. And it's what we all need collectively to just continue to live on Earth. So I thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Cantrell, for that great exposition of what you're doing in New Orleans and your commitment. So really great to hear that. I'd like now to turn to Mayor Peduto of Pittsburgh. And you've been working really closely with C40 and New York City on divestment and investment in climate solutions. So can you tell me a little bit about what Pittsburgh's steps on divestment are, and also towards the energy transition, and where this new declaration fits into your future plans?
Thank you. We've had the opportunity to sort of put together a plan over the past several years. Looking at divestment back in 2014, 2015, there were very few cities that were actually considering it. New York City was one of those leaders, and working with Dan and Mayor de Blasio, we started a conversation very early on. With the leadership of Mayor Khan and U.S. mayors like Mayor Cantrell, C40 has given us a vehicle in order to be able to not simply divest, but divest in a way that will allow other cities to become a part, and where our collective amount of pension funds will have a significant factor in the changing from fossil fuel driven economy to one of a green economy. It's by doing this that cities are taking the lead around the world in the most critical issues facing us as people. And Pittsburgh's proud to be one of the 12 signatory cities in the world. Now, you have to understand where this comes from, though, because it's sort of different than other cities. We are a part of the Northern Appalachians, the Ohio Valley. We are where coal was discovered along the shores of our Monongahela River. We are where oil was discovered in Venango County, 40 miles north of Pittsburgh. And we sit on one of the largest resources of natural gas through the Marcellus and Utica shales of the world. So fossil fuels are a part of our economy, but what we're looking for is a just transition, a transition that understands that in the future, these jobs will not be there, but we want to be able to see a people first way of transitioning out. Divestment becomes a critical tool in helping to steer the market toward a green economy. But we are also looking at investment, investing in green technology, investing in a green economy within the city, in using those funds that we would have invested on Wall Street onto Main Street, and to help local businesses to create additional portfolio within their own companies to become part of the green economy. In Pittsburgh, we are proud to house 2 buildings that meet the highest standard of any buildings in the world. They're called living buildings. They use no more energy than a flower. They use water from rain. There are no pipes or electrical systems. They generate all their own power, and everything in the building is built at the highest environmental standards. But what's most important is almost all of it was produced within a 100-mile radius of the city of Pittsburgh, meaning that we can invest in companies that are already here to build the buildings of tomorrow, to transition that coal miner, that person who's working in the field on natural gas, that person who is working in the oil industry of Northern Pennsylvania, and guarantee to them and their family that there will be jobs for them tomorrow. America desperately needs a Marshall Plan, a plan that was put together after World War II, where the United States invested into the areas of Europe that were decimated. And we can see in our own country, in our urban areas, in certain neighborhoods, and in our rural areas that have been dependent upon fossil fuels for over 100 years, where areas are going to be left behind in the new economy. By creating a Marshall Plan and by investing and using pension funds as part of that investment, we can assure that those areas that would have been left behind will actually be the leaders in rebuilding the American economy for the 21st century. In those areas like Appalachia, in the Ohio Valley, in the Mon Valley, in the Shenango Valley, all those areas that built America once will be asked to build America again.
Thank you, Mayor Peduto. That was an absolutely stirring example of the challenges that we face in moving away from a fossil fueled economy, and the real hard choices about encouraging people towards that just transition and having that foresight and that leadership, you but all the other cities that have joined this declaration. So thank you very much for that. And just a plug, I guess, also for the C40, the Divest Invest Toolkit for all those cities who are starting out on this journey. We all start from different places, but just taking those first steps is absolutely critical. And that collaboration, the work that you've been doing with Dan at New York and others, is exactly the approach that we want to encourage. So thank you. So now I'm going to move on to a question to Bhakti Chandani, who is the Director of Responsible Investing at Trinity Church, Wall Street, but also lectures in the Masters in Sustainability Management at Columbia University. Bhakti, you've written really widely on sustainable investing and have extensive practical experience in sustainable finance. As cities, we know that climate solutions are necessary to ensure a livable, low carbon future for our communities, but they're also a great financial opportunity. So what climate related investment opportunities are currently attracting capital and why?
Thank you, Shirley, for the question. I'm delighted to be here today. Trillions in public dollars are being directed toward the recovery, and institutional investors are reassessing their portfolios during the twin public health and economic crises. Today's investments yield tomorrow's societies, so it's essential that today's investments advance at least some of the following goals. Number 1, supporting climate solutions. Number 2, creating good jobs. Number 3, advancing environmental justice. And number 4, supporting living communities. Over $200 billion in public recovery money has been pledged to fossil fuel energy by the G20 countries. This is 17% more than the amount directed toward clean energy. Between government support during the pandemic and historically low interest rates, there's never been a better time to make the $2.4 trillion annual investment to tackle the climate crisis. The energy transition requires far-reaching changes to energy, transportation, manufacturing, construction, and agriculture. This entails capital expenditure and innovation by companies across industries engaged in everything from extracting raw materials to providing software. The task for investors is twofold. Number 1, to identify companies with the technologies, business models, and competitive advantages to thrive in the energy transition. And number 2, to ensure that management teams are sufficiently focused on spending now to ensure that their businesses survive in a low carbon future. As an example, the automotive sector is scrambling to reinvent itself. Sustainability-linked debt also has an important role to play in the low-carbon transition, and its issuance has quadrupled in the US and tripled globally last year. Sustainability-linked debt ties the borrower's achievement of predetermined sustainability performance targets to the financing rate. Unlike green bonds, which fund projects with environmental and/or climate benefit, sustainability-linked debt is not contractually limited to green use of proceeds. Instead, it allows a range of issuers, including those with a high carbon footprint, to further dedicate themselves to their sustainability strategies. Also, for companies with particularly sustainable strategies and business models, innovative general corporate purpose financing products that create financial incentives for the company to fulfill its sustainable business model are a more scalable way to drive the sustainability of the capital markets and the world.
Thank you, Bhakti. That's really helpful and sort of good food for thought as we're trying to think about where we divert those investments that we've all collectively committed to invest into the sort of green recovery that we're all advocating. I'd now like to turn to May, who's the Executive Director of 350.org, and just to ask you, 350 has been at the forefront of the fossil fuel divestment movement for close to a decade. So why is it important now for cities to show leadership on this agenda?
Thank you so much. And it's a real pleasure to be here because this Divest Invest declaration really matters. We need to show that we can move money away from where it is doing damage by propping up the fossil fuel industry that drives our climate crisis. I'm speaking to you all from Oakland, California, where the air has been unhealthy to breathe for over a month, and the fires are breaking records every single year. These impacts are what my generation had hoped we would not see this soon, but the science is clear. We have to keep warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius, and there is no way of doing that if we continue to power our economy on coal, oil, and gas. Why are we still doing it when these impacts are so severe? Well, because some people are still making money off of climate change. This is how climate change makes existing inequalities worse. The Divest Invest movement connects rising inequality to the climate crisis, as very few benefit financially from climate change, and millions, especially Black, Brown, and Indigenous peoples, suffer the impacts. This is not a game. People's lives are on the line. Millions of people are sick from COVID-19. Millions more have lost their jobs and are struggling to provide for their families. We have to build back better and differently. That's why we're proud to sign on to these 5 principles for a just recovery. The first, put people's health first, no exceptions. Second, provide economic relief directly to people. Third, help our workers and communities, not corporate executives. 4, create resilience for future crises. And 5, build solidarity and community across borders. Do not empower authoritarians. These are principles mayors on this call and many others can and have delivered on. I want to highlight point number 5, do not empower authoritarians. Mayors have a powerful role to play in uplifting a different kind of leadership. Mayors can fight to make sure every vote is counted in their cities. I'm speaking to you weeks before the most important election in my lifetime. This action, combined with the Divest Invest declaration today, the COVID-19 Mayoral Task Force, and so much more, are why we are so proud to partner with C40 and the mayors on this call. C40 mayors have the potential to come together and act globally with social movements. If mayors act together, they can put pressure on national governments who are resistant to these kinds of changes, and they can show, crucially, that international collaboration is possible and it's happening right now. They can divest and invest in a just recovery and work with movements to uplift and support people's action for the just recovery we so crucially need.
Thank you, May. And those are absolutely 5 principles I think that you'll see reflected in the Recovery Task Force principles, and many, as you said, of the mayors on this call and beyond have been acting on those, but we still need to do more. We have a few minutes just to ask a question from the audience that was pre-submitted, so only a few minutes, so I'd like some short answers. But the question is, how can the public participate to support the goals of the Divest Invest declaration? So from the mayors or from the financial institutions or from 350.org, what is it, how can the public participate? Who'd like to go first? Mayor Cantrell, can I ask you to answer that question first? You're on mute, so yeah. You're still on mute, I think. That's it.
No, thank you so much. But, one of the ways that the public can truly engage is to become an advocate, for divestment at your institution, or whether it's a university, corporation, even as it relates to, a retirement account. That's a real opportunity for some action that is noticeable. And I think that it will, you'll feel good about it immediately. Support green finance mechanisms as well. They enable the private sector entities to take advantage of some of the sustainable investments. And also reach out to state and federal representatives to advocate for pension. I know Mayor Peduto spoke about this as well in terms of the pension fund divest and invest strategies. So I would encourage, along those lines.
Mayor Peduto, maybe given Mayor Controller's mentioned your work.
Yeah, no, the people are the critical component in this. Having the ability to lobby and to get your city council, to get your mayor involved is absolutely critical. When we were starting this out years ago, we were leaning on 350.org in order to give us guidance of how to do it. But we also had the ground forces, the people on the ground through an organization called the Thomas Merton Center in Pittsburgh, which is a socially active organization that works on civil and human rights. And they were doing the lobbying with the council, with the pension board, with my office, and providing that critical backup support. We need that. There will be those that will oppose a divestment strategy, even though the fossil fuel industry is one of the least productive industries on the market. There will still be those that will say, this should not even be looked at, that the portfolio of a pension fund should not have other factors. When we look at ours, we have decided to go with industry standards on ESGs, environmental, social, and governance model, in order to be able to put together our investment strategy. These ESGs are looked at around the world by financial planners, and they perform and heavily outperform the fossil fuel industry. There's a quote from a Pennsylvanian. His name was Benjamin Franklin. And I think it really does get to the point of what we're talking about today. You can do well by doing good. And when you're able to use those dollars that the taxpayers have provided, and it's able to create not only an investment back, but it helps to build a better world, why wouldn't you?
Indeed, why wouldn't you? Bhakti, what about you?
Thank you, Shirley. The public can take advantage of low interest rates to invest in the low carbon transition and invest in companies that are doing so. The $2.4 trillion required annually would be the world's largest peacetime investment. Interest rates affect all industries, but have an outside influence on renewables. Since sun, wind, and water are all free, fuel costs are essentially zero, and CapEx is the biggest component of the average cost of producing renewable electricity. In other words, renewables cost tends to be front-loaded, requiring upfront borrowing, and they deliver savings over time. The same is true of many green technologies. It costs more to build energy-efficient homes and buy energy-efficient cars, but less to run them. So the public can buy energy-efficient, durable goods and invest in companies that are investing in the low-carbon transition. With climate change's wildfires, floods, and hurricanes, no man is an island. The bell tolls for all of us, and low interest rates and the market correction are making it all the more attractive to participate in.
Thank you, Maxie. And May, you're the doyen, I guess, of the social movement. And I would have to say that, I'd echo what Mayor Cantrell and Mayor Peduto has said, the importance of organizations like yours in holding our feet to the fire, but also giving us courage and, ability to hold our nerve in some of these difficult decisions when we've got so many interests against the sort of action that we know that that is going to improve people's lives and tackle the climate emergency and so on. So May, what do you think?
Yeah, I would just build on what Mayors Cantrell and Peduto have said and what you just said, Shirley, that this declaration is in fact the result of effective public participation with cities. And I would argue all good policy is the result of participation in democracy and participation in people making their voices heard, advocating for what their communities need, and then working with public officials who are sympathetic and want to support the work of movements and who themselves have a vision that is aligned with building a better world. So I think for people listening who are not yet involved in the fossil fuel divestment movement, as Mayor Cantrell said, part of why this movement has been so successful is there's a way for everyone to participate. So if you have a bank account, if you are part of a city pension plan, you may not know about it, but you probably are. If you went to a school that has an endowment that hasn't divested, you can visit gofossilfree.org and you can see if an institution that you have a connection to has already divested. If it hasn't, you can sign up right there to get active and involved in your community. And particularly when, as we've said on this call, national governments are not doing everything they need to tackle climate change and inequality, there is so much more we can do when we focus on the money and where money is flowing. And so this is a great way to get involved. And when there are announcements like this important declaration today, it's a great time to go back to your institution and remind them if they haven't divested yet, now is a good time. And show them the cities who've signed on, show them it's still important. It took my alma mater, Middlebury College, years of pressure to divest, and they are famous for their environmental studies program. So just to say, it takes a lot of patience, but keep at it, and don't forget to vote wherever you are in whatever place. That's always an important thing to do.
Thank you, May. And just want to say thank you to our wonderful panelists, fantastic discussion there. And now I'd like to hand back to Dan, who's going to take us through the end of the session now.
Wonderful, I'm back. So thank you, Shirley, and thank you to all of our panelists. It was a really inspiring conversation, and it really helped shed some concrete light on the subject at hand and the meaning and the need to divest from fossil fuels and invest in the climate solutions of the future. Our next speaker is a very special and inspirational. Meera Dasgupta is the 2020 United States Youth Poet Laureate, the program of Urban Word. A Van Leer Fellow, Federal Hall Fellow, Climate Speaks winner, and Scholastic Arts and Writing winner, her performances have been featured by global companies and conferences. It's quite the resume for a 16-year-old. Meera is passionate about exploring the intersection between social justice and poetry in order to uplift the voices of historically underrepresented communities. And we are honored that she has written a new composition especially for our event today. I present to you the 2020 US Youth Poet Laureate and New York City Public High School student, Meera Dasgupta.
Lineage. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. A Native American proverb. There is a mother here. Her skin has known the salt of broken oceans. Her hands have traced the sun until it became her. She has learned respect from a father and his hands, how the bones of dead flowers made their garden a burial ground. Her body was her family's burial ground. It escaped and left her with a vase. In it, her reflection appeared and shattered. There is a brother here. He has learned to breathe air as dark as his skin. There are no lights in a city of stars that do not reach him. Some days he feels paper weight. In his dreams he is flying. He's forgotten the smell of grass and his mother. He's forgotten the sounds of the wind, what it means to fly. In his dreams, he carries a star in his pocket, but it burns from the inside out. It reminds him of himself, that there is a burning within him. There is a father here. He overflows into his mother's garden. Her flames lick his stubborn skin as he swallows the ocean whole. He writes odes to himself until his blood becomes a dead rose. And as the sea levels rise, as they run like a crimson-mouthed psalm, as children curl like wayward leaves, as storms shake their sea blue hands, as these hands overturn burial grounds, as burial grounds become his mother, a father becomes a son in mourning. There is a daughter here. She's been taught to sustain on seeds, but to never settle for them, to treat the grounds as she treats her body, to till the earth until she too is the sun. When morning arrives, she finds the shattered reflections of her mother and recalls the pieces. Countless oceans converging where she stands. You can hear an echo of lineage, the sound of 1,000 daughters, mothers, sons, and fathers. How they become a garden, how their voices bloom among the scattered bones and carry like seeds to wind.
Thank you, Mira. Mira's words really show us how artists and young people can play an essential role in communicating climate action and inspiring us to act. And I'd like to thank her again for her contribution today. Our last speaker of the day is Mayor Sadiq Khan from London, who co-chairs the C40 Divest Invest Forum with Mayor de Blasio. Both champion mayors came together to create the C40 Divest Invest Forum, a first of its kind network aimed at ending investments in fossil fuels and expanding investments in climate solutions globally. It provides the opportunity for mayors and other city leaders to share the knowledge and tools proven to accelerate divestment. In his city, as part of his commitment to make London zero carbon by 2030, Mayor Khan has worked with his city pension fund, the London Pension Fund Authority, to divest from fossil fuels, including selling stakes in ExxonMobil, BP, Shell, and Coal India. He's also been calling on London boroughs and London-based organizations to follow his lead and divest from fossil fuels and scale up green investment. Through his policy in this field, Mayor Khan proves that with unfailing determination, a clear plan, and the desire to work with all stakeholders, it's possible to make that shift happen. Mayor Khan also serves on the C40 Steering Committee as a vice chair representing European mayors. Without further ado, London Mayor Sadiq Khan.
I want to begin by paying tribute to my friend Mayor de Blasio, not only for the exceptional leadership he's demonstrated in the fight against climate change, but for the central role he's played in the C40 Divest Invest Declaration. I'd also like to thank all the mayors and representatives from those other great forward-thinking cities which have today become signatories of this declaration. In collectively affirming our support for the cause of divestment, we're sending out a powerful message that now is the time to bring about a sea change away from fossil fuels and towards cleaner, greener energy sources. There's simply no hiding from the fact that climate change is the biggest threat we face today. And with the clock ticking, we can either be the first generation that truly comprehends the scale of the problem and manages to deal with it, or the last generation that fails to and does not. This declaration underscores our commitment to building a future free from the toxic grip of fossil fuels, as well as our support for increasing green investments, creating green jobs, and delivering the green recovery we need from COVID-19. And I look forward to continuing this vital work together.
Thank you so much, Mayor Khan, for your leadership and collaboration in this effort. So after hearing from these inspiring speeches and speakers, I'm sad to say our event is coming to an end. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. On behalf of Mayor de Blasio and of our partners, Climate Week NYC, the Earth Institute of Columbia University, and C40 Cities, I'd like to thank all of our speakers for their insights and their leadership. After hearing from all of you, it's clearer than ever that divesting from fossil fuels and investing in climate solutions is core to a green and just recovery. Congratulations to all the cities that have stepped up to lead on this. Welcome to the movement. And of course, the movement continues on social media. We hope you'll join us. Please continue the conversation with the hashtags DivestInvest, Climate Week NYC, and The Future We Want. Thank all of you for joining us this morning, and enjoy the rest of your Climate Week. And let me also offer a special thanks to Shirley, and to echo her thanks for the entire team that put this together, specifically Lolita Jackson, Jasmine Burgess, and the entire C40 Divest Invest team, and the whole team at both London and New York City mayor's offices. Thank you so much for everything you've done to pull this together. To all of our attendees, please enjoy the rest of your Climate Week NYC. Thank you and goodbye.